Welcome to Massive Signals, where we explore the companies defining the next wave of deep tech and the inflection points that took them from lab to market. I'm David Mandel, joined by my co-founder Ari Newman. Each episode, we go deep with founders, investors, and researchers driving breakthroughs in energy, quantum, AI, defense, and the new space economy. This is Massive Signals. Today we're sitting down with Vrajesh Bhavsar, founder and CEO of Operant AI. Vrajesh has spent his career deep in the guts of critical security systems, from Apple to ARM. And now he's building at the frontier of AI security, focused on protecting models and agents while they're actually running in production. What makes this conversation interesting isn't just the technology, but the timing. As AI agents play a more dominant role in the enterprise software stack, the way we secure those systems is fundamentally changing. Vrajesh saw this problem early and made the leap to build the infrastructure for a world that's moving faster than most enterprises are ready for. We're going to talk about his vision and progress building Operant, the key inflection points along the way, and what signals he's watching as this market explodes. Vrajesh, really glad to have you here. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yes. So for context, for those that are watching or listening, we've known Vrajesh for a couple of years now. We are proud investors in Operant. The company has had an incredible ride the last few years. And we are really excited to sort of dive into the background, the story, and the key inflection points that you've hit along the way. So my first question for you is, given your background from Apple, working at ARM, moving into AI, you walk us through a little bit of like the origin story and the catalyst for Operant.
Thanks again for having me, and really excited to chat here. What a great time to be building something in AI or even in security, and just like absolutely phenomenal to be building in AI and security. So I think it's just, I find myself absolutely fortunate to have the experience and expertise in both these areas throughout my career. I was at Apple early on at the time when the core security tenets in the way that it's being thought about today were just getting built. We built the deep capabilities around secure Enclave that brings data protection, privacy, multi-cloud, multi-device security that millions of people now rely on every day across billions of devices. And, having gone through like a lot of waves of improving, iterating, bringing that to the market in this way, there are so many lessons that obviously you carry forward across your career. And later I was again fortunate to be at ARM at a time when deep learning and kind of the early waves of Gen AI was just emerging. And I was part of the team that built out the machine learning business unit and came out with a lot of the key components that enable cross ecosystem AI acceleration to happen. So it's been just phenomenal to be at these interesting inflection points of these large trends in many ways, where now that, when you have been at so many interesting ecosystems and trends, seeing what is coming like 5 years out is not a difficult kind of position, but coming especially from that type of background. But, bringing that to reality as well as kind of connecting the dots of like, okay, this is where we are seeing the adoption of Kubernetes, adoption of APIs, adoption of AI models. Early on, when we were getting started, not a lot of people even believed like Kubernetes is going to be a thing. Far along, like no one really knew Gen AI is going to be Gen AI. Fortunately, I was at a Gen AI startup before Gen AI became a thing. And for us, it has always been North Star to bring the powerful capabilities of what well-architected systems can do. Think about it as deep tech, think about it as, infrastructure, plumbing, however, a lot of people talk about it in the different ways. At the end of the day, these kinds of core backbones are just absolutely critical when you want to think about scaling the mass market trends that are happening right now. So yeah, very, very fortunate to be at this juncture, at this time, at this inflection point with AI and security.
And before we get too deep into exactly what you do, because we can go very deep there, you mentioned we a couple of times when you were giving the quick background there. One of the things that we were super blown away about with Operant is your incredible founding team. So maybe just give us a quick background on how the three of you got together. Tell us a little bit about them, and then how those conversations between the three of you evolved into let's go start this business.
Absolutely, yeah. That's always absolutely the funnest and the most challenging thing, because you are going to be with your co-founders kind of forever. And we all have been super fortunate to be working on this together. So just a quick intro. Our co-founder and CTO, Priyanka Tembe, she comes from the world of distributed systems. She has a PhD from Georgia Tech. She built the VMware Cloud Foundation business from the ground up. And before she went there, she and I used to work together at Qualcomm Research. And we built the foremost machine learning powered ransomware detection on mobile devices that, is used everywhere at this point. And it was just really great timing for us to reconnect and work on this together. We also very intentfully brought on a go-to-market and kind of the operations side of the house. So Ashley Roof, who is our third co-founder, our CEO. She comes from more of the go-to-market, marketing, as well as sales operations side of things, where her background started early at Google, pioneering the SEO business, taking Google into Asia, kind of establishing that market and that business. And over the years, she has worked on DevOps and many other cloud-first companies. So yeah, our team is really, when we think about it, it's kind of covering a lot of areas between the three of us, with a lot of operational experience, kind of also having built a lot of things. We roll up the sleeves, but also can bring in a lot of the strategic vision.
Vrajesh, what was it that the three of you saw? How did those early conversations go, where you decided that either there was a problem so big you wanted to risk everything to go solve it? What was the sort of genesis of Operant vis-a-vis all the millions of other opportunities you could have pursued in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, absolutely. We are talking 4 years ago or something, 4 or 5 years now, right? And early days, we were kind of building this out ourselves we had these 2-3 key components that are part of our vision. One is just doing dashboards and logging is just not going to be enough as systems start scaling. People don't have there will not be enough manpower to actually go tackle these things manually, and the level of infrastructure and backbone that is needed to scale these systems is just going to be massive, that you need to have a lot of actions and intelligence baked into a lot of these critical systems. The second kind of being that you need to have products, and we'll talk about products that are going to be turnkey and they are easily deployable. They can actually start scaling instead of these. At the time, DevOps used to be a massive space, and it would be cool to just build something and throw it over the fence to let engineers tinker and create something that they can maintain on their own. But for us, it was kind of coming from our experiences at VMware and Apple. It's kind of well, you need to provide something that is going to just start working right away. I think that piece of that approach has really, really helped us in what we are able to do in cyber, where, a lot of teams, they are used to seeing months-long POCs and, deployments take many months and many cycles, versus when they see Operant, it starts working in minutes. And it really just completely changes the game in what you can do in this kind of a market. And the third piece being part of the vision, where there has been a lot of work in the core foundations of the operating systems and networking and distributed systems that kind of lingers in all these different areas. But there is nothing that actually brings all that knowledge and intelligence into a single product and platform. I think for us, having that breadth of experience from kernel to cloud, it was kind of obvious to bring all of that together into a single solution and platform that can then kind of grow from there.
Good jumping off point to actually give us the quick description. What is Operant doing? Right, you had this vision, great conversations. You kind of saw where the market was going. Can you just give us the quick high level, like how do you describe our Operant? What are you actually doing?
Absolutely, yeah. So Operant is the platform that does runtime protection for AI and cloud. With Operant's core products, we are securing all the cloud API workloads, as well as going deep in securing AI, Agentic, and MCP related applications. Now, we like to use the word protection very specifically and intentfully because we actually can protect, we can defend, we can control, we can quarantine, we can stop and block. And that's something that is really core to, as I was explaining, part of like how our approach and architecture works. But we are the foremost company in this space. We are the only vendor recognized by Gartner across five categories around AI security. AI Prism, Market Guide for API protection, MCP gateways, securing custom agents, and LLM supply chain. Which, if you think about it, they are all just individually, they are massive categories in themselves. But for a single platform to be able to tackle all of that, we are incredibly proud to have that recognition. And it's all powered by the patented technology that we have built.
Awesome.
So let's go a little deeper here and talk about like what was the first year or 18 months of the company like. We're gonna eventually build all the way up to today, right? Because there's some really exciting pieces of the story. So it's 4 years ago. The three of you get together. You all had this deep experience from kernel to cloud. You realized that the current security architecture and footing was very reactionary and human driven, and that the only way to provide it just works out of the box was through automation and AI because of the volume and scale of Kubernetes nodes and just the volume of cloud. So you abandon ship, you leave your cushy jobs at your great companies with household names that we all respect, and you start down this path. So what happens? What happens next?
Yeah, we go down building. I think the first year was very much about getting the right architectural pieces in place and making sure of the things that we have in mind can actually be realized. We actually have like we are looking at these like early demos that we were building out, right? And it's kind of incredible to look back and like we had like a lot of the core ideas baked into some of the first MVPs that we built out. Often I like look at a lot of founder journeys and like we find it really fortunate that we were pretty spot on from like early days to kind of chase the approach in like being very mindful about, well, if you want to get the right telemetry and the right signals, we have to capture all this data and we need to be able to process it in these intelligent ways. And the first, it's always like really kind of humbling when you have early customers and design partners just adopt some of the products that you build and kind of give you like real feedback. And the first deployment we ever had with a design partner, they were just blown away themselves with like the complexity that they were dealing with and the level of visibility and kind of, the insights that we brought to them. And so, from there on, we were just off to the startup growth from like getting into our seed just early in 2023. Is that right? Yes. And did our Series A in late 2024. And here we are.
And can you talk about who some of the early design partners or existing customers are? Or is it all confidential?
I think we are very fortunate to have companies that are very in highly regulated industries. And so, a lot of them, we are under NDAs and confidentialities. But as you can imagine, financial and healthcare sectors are very much, they take this stuff very seriously. A lot of high-tech companies that are also always like at the forefront of adopting a lot of these modern stacks, whether it's Kubernetes, whether it's AI, these days it's all MCP. A lot of companies at the forefront of their, technical trends, technology trends. They're all very interested. We are talking to some of the biggest names deployed with some of the Fortune 100 now. And it's been great.
So Vrajesh, before we go past the design partners into actual production and all the crazy growth you guys have had, when you're still early on, were some of those early design partner conversations really hard, right? Did some of them make you question what you were doing? Did some of them like really make you change direction? Did any of them give you like really key insight into, oh my God, we need to rethink this, or was it always just perfect? We're right on.
That's a good question. I think our early vision and, obviously something that we are kind of continuing to march towards is it started with pretty broad. It was beyond security. And early on, when with early design partners, when they were using us for all these different use cases, that's where we kind of really started grounding more and more in security. I think that piece of working with those early design partners really helped us to hone in more on the security related use cases beyond what all the other things that we could do with them. And so that was extremely helpful in the way that where we are today. And being able to then kind of repeat that with more, follow-on engagements was absolutely critical.
So I would love to go deeper into sort of the last 12 months. But before we do that, let's take a little detour and talk about all of you founders are experienced operators. You've been in Silicon Valley a long time. How did you guys approach choosing your investors, approach capital formation, and sort of what were your guiding principles around that?
Absolutely. Being operators ourselves and having seen a lot of startup journeys over the years, we had a few ideas of what was critical to us. But obviously, there is no right or wrong answer in terms of how you go about shaping your startup journey. For us, it was absolutely critical to work with people who can relate to the founder journey as well as relate to the kind of space that we are operating in. It was also very important that we bring in a mix of different investors and different advocates that would, bring a lot of different perspectives and backgrounds. That has really helped us a lot. And lastly, it has been really helpful to work with people who can actually support across the board, not just be grinding you on numbers because early on you are still shaping a long-term vision. But when you have investors who have themselves been founders, who have themselves gone through some of these journeys, they can bring a lot of breadth in the kind of advice and support that you need along the way. Yeah, so for us, those were some of the guiding principles for us. And we are really fortunate to have, a lot of phenomenal investors across the board, including you guys, that we are really, really excited for.
Some of your other investors are?
Yeah, so our two core investors are Felicis and Sinewave. Felicis has been phenomenal. Aiden has been great to work with. On the Sinewave side, we are really fortunate to have Pat on our board. Pat comes from whole life in cyber and NSA herself. And yeah, really fortunate to have support from kind of both sides of the world, both on the Silicon Valley as well as Washington.
Well, I think you've certainly surrounded yourself with an interesting group that has both domain expertise and operational history. So that's awesome. So Vrajesh, when David and I talk about Operant internally,
always good.
The metrics and the sort of narrative that we're always looking at is how's the company's market position vis-a-vis solving a huge problem in cyber and AI? And then how is that translating into logos and revenue and traction? And the scale of the opportunity for you is so big that we often have said revenue is probably the lagging indicator of the company's long-term potential. So I'm curious if you have a reaction to that. And then this ultimately is a setup for the next section of conversation about inflection. How do you guys think about that? And what are the sort of North Star pieces of data that you look at to know that you're on the right track or give you pause and make you rethink things?
Yeah, I mean, look, you guys are in the business of investing in people that are so far along and the deep tech and inflection point side of things. And that's true for us, where for us, we were fortunate to partner with you guys. And, at a time when even people didn't even realize that Kubernetes was that important to be securing. And today, I cannot tell you a single discussion I have that if those customers don't use Kubernetes, everyone is on Kubernetes. Everyone is using some way or form, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's on-prem, whether it's some hybrid, some private air-gapped environment, doesn't matter. Right. I think, and that pace, that change, it's, as you guys are kind of saying, it's impossible to kind of predict that, but also at the same time, you cannot really just measure metric on how far is this going to go. And I think now that we are kind of taking Kubernetes and these cloud native deployments as like a de facto, what's going on even further is like how people are adopting AI, how people are adopting agents. And what is happening right now is that over the last year or two, people have, like a lot of enterprises have kind of baked out like, okay, I can have these kinds of use cases that I would get a solid ROI on. These are the ways that I'm going to invest in these technologies. And now it has reached a point of production level scale, right? I mean, we don't have to, I think you'll find like hundreds of reports out there from the Accentures to AWS on like how much AI is getting used in all these environments and all these industries. Right. And now at this point, it's like people are working on ways to increase their production ROI, increase their security posture, and get ready for that next phase that is coming with agentic AI. And we can talk all about like where that is going, but at the same time, kind of just seeing that type of adoption in our customers and our conversations has just been phenomenal over the last year.
So, and that transition is really, really interesting too, because as Ari and I again deal with every day, and I'm sure you're aware, like one of the challenges of building in deep tech is translating technology into a business, right? And we deal with a lot of super incredibly smart people building amazing technologies, but translating that technology into an actual commercial application, into a business, is not easy. And as we mentioned earlier, you made the really good move early on of bringing Ashley on as part of the co-founding team. So there was not just a technical co-founding team; you had real marketing, distribution, sales capabilities on that team. What have been some of the biggest challenging parts for you about building Operant on the non-technical side, like actually on the business building side? Walk us through a couple of those, like just hurdles or insights or key inflection points for you on translating what you guys built into an actual business.
That's a great question and great point, right? I think, there have been a few different learnings and kind of the way that we have adapted to that. As I was mentioning earlier, right? Like when we first, and this is maybe like beyond the previous 12 months, as we were mainly bringing a Kubernetes-native solution to the market, there were a lot of ways that we learned how to actually convert that into business, right? As we think about the adoption of Kubernetes and the rate at which enterprises were going through the change in their own environments, there were a lot of like non-decisions getting made around Kubernetes. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to build it myself? I'm going to buy this thing, So, and as I mentioned earlier around like, hey, are we just going to target security? Are we going to target more use cases? Are we going to then like bring that to a platform team or a DevOps team? Or are we just going to focus on the security buyer, so to say? I think more and more as we have gone through our journey, we have been more mindful about how we solve the security problem with the security buyer in mind, and kind of improving that whole iteration with the kind of market positioning as well as a lot of the work that goes in the go-to-market side of it in terms of how you approach events and analyst relationships and all the good stuff behind that. So now that over the last year, which has been just absolutely phenomenal for us. So having built on the power of Kubernetes, we built the 3D defense platform. And that 3D defense technology was then brought into AI Gatekeeper as a separate product, which we launched just before RSA last year. And we also brought that into MCP Gateway, which is something that brings the 3D defense technology all the way into all the MCP ecosystem. And so, and by the way, all of this in production, it all goes on Kubernetes. So it all ties together in a beautiful way, which is incredible to see the market reach that inflection point now, that with the push around MCP, we are getting so much inbound around how customers are thinking about adoption of that, how agents have now accelerated so many roadmaps. And this is happening on both sides, where there are agents that are getting built to AI clients like Cursor or Claude or ChatGPT. And so a lot of employees are building agents themselves, whether it's developers or whether it's finance teams. And then companies are building agents in their own production workflows, whether it's going beyond chat now, right? It's like, how am I going to respond to these customer requests? How am I responding to some of these order processing? You are seeing now that beyond MCP and A2A. Just recently, Google announced their commerce protocol, so to say, which itself is going beyond the MCP side. It's called UCP. And now, so that just like proves the theory that we had started with, right? Like that, hey, you can't just like stop at the kernel or network layer. All the action is really happening at the API and beyond. And you need to cross connect all these dots to actually protect them.
You know what? Since pretty soon we're going to have no idea who's talking to what and who wrote what code, we're just going to call it XCP as a catch-all.
You heard it here. That's where you're going. Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks. XCP is the future.
And we protect it now.
Right. And the only company that can protect you from XCP threats is Operant.
We're doing your next ad right now, Vrajesh.
That's right. So, we've been watching over the last year. It really is a moment for you where we're already at the forefront of autonomous security for cloud and for containers, Kubernetes architecture. And then MCP shows up and everyone's talking about it. Agentic AI shows up and now the robots are writing the code and deploying it and other robots are using it. And the original thesis that you talked about earlier was that this needed to just work out of the box and it couldn't have human intervention because of the scale. So now when you've basically like let the robots run wild, the volume and speed at which code is being deployed, instances and processes are being spun up, it's totally out of control. And so the market kind of came to you. So the agentic AI moment was a massive signal for you, to use the pun.
Yes.
How did you guys react or adapt your messaging or your go-to-market or your positioning when you realized, hey, we're already there. We already have a solution for this nascent problem that everyone's going to face?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's a great way to put it where the market was coming to us because we already had envisioned like these are the things that are going to come as more Gen AI and intelligence get baked into a lot of these production environments. Being in front of customers who were already like working on some of these things has been kind of the key part of our kind of path to reach here. Obviously, yes, you have the vision, you have the product that is kind of, and the technology that is kind of catching up to that, building out that vision. But as David mentioned, you also need the commercial success with that. And for us, all of these ways that we have evolved comes with the way that we have engaged with the market. So for example, I'll give you both these examples, right? Like, so when we built out AI Gatekeeper, we were already working with customers who were at the forefront of bringing these LLM models inside their Kubernetes environments and kind of early on working with Anthropic on this MCP side of things. So, before MCP really became open, it was still like the way that enterprises were engaged with these foundational model companies. And so we were really fortunate to be part of some of those early adoptions where we saw the need from the customers. And when we had a product that is ready to solve those solutions, it was just like, yes, we are supporting the customers as they are today, but then also kind of build out the further out products that will allow for more scale. The same goes with MCP Gateway. Like we did that. So we brought AI Gatekeeper based on some of these customer engagements, but also like having seen where these things are going and, coming from the backgrounds of distributed systems and cloud and kernel, it was like natural to start moving ahead, like, as they say, like moving where the puck is going to be. And really fortunate to have been there with MCP Gateway. In fact, a lot of times we are engaged with customers where they are looking to learn more from us with the patterns that they should be doing in the right architecture for their agentic applications and all that. So it's really like, yeah.
What does it feel like on the ground? Like, everyone here has run a business, right?
Yes.
Sometimes it's a vibe and sometimes it's data and metrics. What does it feel like on the ground for you all right now in the last 6 months as all of this is sort of coming together and you're having this convergence moment?
Yeah, like we are trying to stay on top of everything coming our way. We are literally having, so it's like this goes across many things, right? Like
has your sales motion changed? Was it all pure outbound and evangelism? And is the phone ringing or is the sales motion the same? There's just more market awareness.
No, I think it has actually switched up into a lot more inbound. It has switched up into people coming in with readiness around wanting to deploy and wanting to move very, very quickly. And a lot of times, if you have been through some of the enterprise sales motions, it's like dragging feet to get next call and like a lineup follow-up call setup. Often we would get a demo request from like a large enterprise, and 7 people will show up on the first call. And this is very different. It is very different. It is that piece of the inflection point that we talk about where like that's not going away now, right? Like at this point, we are moving rapidly on what it means for these enterprises to protect their agentic applications and MCP ecosystem. And in fact, over just like the last some of these interactions, we have expanded the way MCP gateway works to support 5 different usage patterns. And when we bring these kinds of insights and the way customers should deploy MCP gateway, it becomes such a natural conversation for them that like they can pre-select into like, well, of the 5, I need to start here, and then I'll talk about 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's it's obviously going a lot better for you than it did for me when I was dealing with the complex enterprise sale for almost a decade of my career, because I was bald by the time I was 35 because it was so hard.
Yeah,
so,
one of the foundational lies in enterprise sales is the customer calls and they want to move quickly.
Right.
Because we know that never ever actually happens. Right?
Yeah, and I think now we are really fortunate to be at such a point where literally one of the discussions we were having, and like we were talking about pricing and all that, and the customer is like, this is the best design pricing plan I have seen from any vendor in security. And nice. I feel really, really fortunate to like people are like, actually taking this all seriously. They're seeing how we are making their lives easier so that they can go protect the systems that a lot of people rely on.
Without getting too far into the sort of enterprise sales weeds, I will say that I remember us having pricing discussions with you during diligence, and one of the things that it turns out you were totally ahead of the curve on was utilization and utility-based pricing versus seat or sort of like enterprise metric. And I remember how difficult it was to figure that out. But in the last 18 months, the SaaS world has completely changed, and seat-based pricing is under immense pressure. And you guys had already sort of done the work on the front end to get paid for your value based on this complexity of the deployment. Mm-hmm. So that was really cool to sort of again see the market come to you that way. So as the kids say, maybe we're glazing you too much here. So let's talk about what's been difficult or what's been way harder than you thought it would be. Like it's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Yeah. What were the key holy shit moments for you so far on the bad side? We've talked a lot about the good side.
Yeah, I mean, I think as early on, as I was saying, I think one of the big learnings for us was the switch that is deep in security. I think we had this vision around like, well, this approach and this solution can actually go do a lot of things. We don't come purely from like having worked at a cyber, we are not insiders in the cyber trade, so to say, even though our experience and expertise lies in security. I wasn't at Palo or Zscaler, like selling securities, and I think there were definitely a lot of industry learnings, so to say, in like coming deeper in cyber and the way the ecosystem works and in the way just like the relationships are. And we have been fortunate to be supported by a lot of great people, and we have built a lot of good relationships with the merit and the capabilities that we have built. So that was tough. I wouldn't lie. Like coming into the pure cyber ecosystem, while we were not from that world, so to say, it was hard to crack into.
Yeah, how did that conversation go with the team? Like, let's go a little deeper on that, because one of the biggest challenges building an early stage startup in deep tech is obviously focus and priority, right? Like, because with the great technology, there's always tons of things you can do, and one of the challenges in actually executing moving forward is prioritization and really realizing what you're not going to do versus what you could do, right? And so that's always a really interesting conversation. So, like, how did that conversation go with the team? Were you all just, you're right, let's go do this? Were there some interesting hard conversations? Or like, walk us through that decision process.
I think this is where like having the go-to-market hat as part of the founding team was absolutely critical. And in the way that we were able to validate like, okay, if we go in this direction, these are the things that we will have to adapt, we'll have to change, but this is where the success will be. So for us, those were the conversations. We are all pragmatic. At the end of the day, we are here to kind of solve these things, but also build a business that is going to be successful. And it boils down to, well, like what are we trying to achieve, as well, and the permutations of how fast and best we can get there.
So Ashley basically smacks you down and said, "This is what we're going to do," and kind of dragged you along.
Yeah, I think we definitely had a lot of discussions around what does a sale in this space look like? What are the kind of categories that we'll have to play in when we talk about Gartner? What are the kinds of personas that we'll have to talk to? What are the types of ICP? So there were a lot of changes that we had to go through when we were learning about like, well, what does this mean? So I think that was like one of the big areas of learning and growth for us. And then like growing out of Kubernetes, like actually building out the multi-product vision that we have now in the market, also had a lot of learnings in terms of how you are positioning overall, what kind of ICP and buyer personas that you work with, what kind of pricing will sit right, how you actually distribute these things, and expand on the distribution side of things as well. So yeah, a lot of learnings on that front.
Are you guys scared about keeping up with the industry? I mean, like you guys are definitely at the forefront right now, but like this stuff's moving really fast. Do you wake up in the middle of the night ever and say, "Oh my God, how are we going to keep up with things going?" Or are you comfortable? Like you're set, you're behind the wheel, you're doing good lap times, you know where you're going, and you're like, "We got this."
For the most part, I feel like we got this, but of course, it's like, I think it's one of the things that maybe it's like a founder trait type of thing where none of us get fluttered by some sparks, like that, some new thing got launched and, some company got $50 million and suddenly they are like, a noise and annoyance for us. And often it's just like when you actually dig under the hood, there isn't a lot to worry about. And so I think we try to participate in things that we strongly believe are going to kind of offer like computationally high returns. And so far, we are confident that we are going to continue doing that.
I have a question for you. There's been a couple of MCP server or MCP security companies that have started in the last year. There's stuff, right? 20, right? It's, I've seen my share of pre-seed decks where, two people looked at each other and said, MCP is hot. Let's go start a security company, and had a canned.
They can't after they left their blockchain business.
All right. And went and put a pre-seed round together. What's your take on the fast followers? And also, what do you think that some of these companies don't understand that you've had to learn the hard way over the last 4 years?
I don't know if I'll share all my learnings, but I can definitely. So I think, and I see, and I genuinely mean this, and like, even if I was not a founder, I would want to kind of talk through, which is when you are approaching something like security with just the idea of making a quick buck, that's not going to get you too far. I think and I see this across the board in many, many, many ways. Can talk about offline. But at the end of the day, you are working with teams that themselves have put their careers at stake. So when you are selling to a security, whether it's a CISO, directors, doesn't matter, like a security engineer, if they're going to trust your product with their own work and career and their customers, security, they're going to vet you like crazy. They're going to hammer the product like crazy. They're going to compare you with everyone. So at the end of the day, the buyer and the market, they're going to say who's right and what's not, right? So especially in this domain, you can't just at this point, you can't just sell snake oil anymore. And yes, it has been a thing for the last decade, and maybe people who come from that background just continue doing that. But that's kind of my philosophy, at least.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that's a sage insight there around the relationship and the trust and the career of the person that's buying the software. Cybersecurity also as an industry has been a really difficult sector for a long time. the market's really saturated. There's a ton of vendors. A lot of the products are really features and point solutions. A lot of companies end up with overlappy features because the customer keeps asking them to do a little more. And then they're competing with everyone and they're not world class at anything. It's a really difficult sector generally. And the advent of AI and AI security, it's almost like you've got the headline, oh, you need AI security, you need MCP security. People don't even understand what that means, and they're deploying MCP inside the enterprise. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. Of course, people, good entrepreneurs and ambitious people want to chase opportunity. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think one of the other traps, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this a little bit, it's not that hard to get a CISO to want to play with something in a lab because it's their job to know about everything. But getting from the pilot or the lab to the production deployment at scale where they're trusting their life and their career on your software is the huge lift that you're talking about. Yeah. So was that journey harder than you thought to get to the place where you are now? And did all of the Gartner love help?
Did all the Gartner love help? Absolutely. Was the journey harder than I thought? Harder than I thought, but I thought it would be hard enough. I didn't go into it thinking like, it will be easy. But also, I think there were a lot of learnings in the way the cyber ecosystem works, the way how you want to educate your buyers in the way that what your vision is, what your differentiation is, how you sit, especially with some of the other tools and investments that they have already made. Because when there are certain tools already in place, the buyer has already gone through the legwork of putting their neck on the line, that I swear by these things. And then if you cannot just come in and be like, oh, rip that apart and you have to start over. So those in the ways that comes about where yes, we can do all those things down the, you decide, right? Yes, we can help you in these 5 different ways. You can choose to rip out all the other things, but also maybe you can just start with 1 or 2 and then you can expand more.
But right? Are you seeing with your customer base that CISOs and companies are choosing to have overlapping multi-layer solutions where they're okay paying for stuff that overlaps because more security is better?
I don't think so. Not the folks that we usually engage with. They are deeply technical, very opinionated, and calculated in terms of because each vendor they bring in is also additional risk that they bring in, and more people are conscious about that. But of course, at the same time, they also are aware that these of the 10 areas, the current tools maybe solve 3, and they have the gap in those 7. And then maybe they're just not ready to bite off the risk for all 7 and tackle them. Maybe they'll work on 2. Because of course, scaling, I think there are a lot of different types of buyers and different types of organizations that can scale these security solutions as well. So, but I would not say that there is a little bit overlap, but in general, people don't try to be I'm gonna, at least in my experience, they're not gonna buy multiple products and just overlap them.
Great insight. We appreciate it. So I think we're gonna jump into a little rapid fire mode now to kind of start winding down and wrapping up, Vrajesh. So just a couple of random quick questions, just quick reactions from you. So most overhyped thing in AI security right now from your perspective?
Agentic identity.
What is that?
I'm waiting for the
people like to talk about NHI or agentic identity, and somehow there are a bunch of startups that are like, oh, it's such a big problem. So I feel like I didn't and I don't know, if you might remember some of the first things that we talked about, which is identity is core to everything, and there is nothing new about agentic identity versus non-agentic. Identity. Anyway, now we are in deep technical discussion there, but I don't know. That's kind of my quick rapid fire answer.
All right, cool. All you got to do is put a new label on some existing thing, and it's a new market.
Exactly.
The next VC you're going to be about agentic identity. Awesome. All right. So another one. When you look at other founders in the startup world, give us one founder behavior that tells you that this person is going to build a company that's going to win.
I would say kind of it would round around authenticity with their buyers as well as with their team.
Authenticity. Cool.
Yep.
Reflecting on the last 4 years, if there was one thing you could go back and do differently, what would that be?
A lot of things. Let's see. Absolutely should have asked for a much larger check, but
You could always ask again.
I think being at the, it's kind of like a hindsight is 2020, right? A lot of the confusion, or I mean, something that we see in the market right now still, with people conflating a lot of different categories, and also like they try to understand like what we do, and then like whatever they think like where we fit, they try to put us in all these different markets. And I think that piece is like really tough. As I look back, we have kind of captured so many categories, and at this point it seems like it just needs to be like a different way to approach this whole thing, and like how you talk about categories or solutions. And because we were talking to someone who is like, oh, you guys have this runtime CNAP, and we talk about like all these ways that is actually protecting you. And it finally occurs to them that like, oh, even though CNAP actually stands for Cloud Native Application Protection, it does not have any protection in it. It only does logging and like reporting, while you guys actually do protections. And then what should we call that? Like, yeah, go ask someone else. That's all.
So the hindsight is you would have positioned the company differently, or you would have gone to your friends at Gartner and told them they had to redefine security categories for the future, not the past.
Maybe both, or like, I mean, that's just going to continue evolving on the Gartner side. But I would think it's hard to convey the power of what we are doing with like aligning it with what the current understanding of the problem space is. You know what I mean? And yeah.
So let's give you the chance to fix that right now, right? So think 5 years from now, how do you describe Operant so that everyone knows exactly what you do, what position you're in? Like, here's your chance. Make your pitch.
It's still gonna be. I'm still gonna call it the runtime AI and Agentic protection platform.
Simple.
That's great.
Yeah, I love what you guys are doing, Vrajesh, and I'm probably going to date myself with this comment. It's not really a question; it's just a comment. But I think often about like if William Gibson was going to rewrite the book Neuromancer, it would be a significant part of that novel. And I don't know how many people listening can actually get that reference, but I think you guys are positioned right where that whole future vision was, and I give you a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing and staying 5 steps ahead of everyone else, and this will turn out great. So thanks for being on the podcast with us. This was a great conversation.
Yeah. Tell Ashley Priyanka we say hi. We miss them all. Thanks for tuning in to Massive Signals. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube, and share the episode with someone who cares about the future of deep tech. And subscribe to our Substack at massive.vc to stay in the loop on all of our current investments, thinking, as well as upcoming events like our quarterly Deep Tech Table Dinners and the second annual Deep Tech Summit May of 2026. Find it all at massive.vc. Until next time, keep listening for the signals that are shaping our future world.